The estate was a labyrinth of quiet luxury, its halls stretching endlessly under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Jungkook wandered through them, his sneakers silent on the polished marble, feeling like a trespasser in a world that wasn't his. It was late afternoon, and Miss Lee had given him a brief reprieve from the relentless schedule of meetings and medical checks. Unable to sit still in the guest room, he'd slipped out to explore, driven by a restless curiosity about the man who'd pulled him into this storm. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of polished wood and old books as he ventured deeper into the estate's west wing. He passed a grand library, a dining room that could seat 20, and a gallery of abstract paintings that felt more like statements than art. Every corner screamed Taehyung's wealth, his control, but offered no clues to the man himself, until Jungkook reached a heavy oak door left slightly ajar. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder to ensure no one was watching. The security briefing and Taehyung's warning about the leak made him wary, but curiosity won out. He pushed the door open, revealing a small, dimly lit room that felt different from the rest of the estate. The walls were lined with shelves of vinyl records and old photographs, a stark contrast to the sterile opulence elsewhere. A single window let in a sliver of fading sunlight, illuminating a worn leather chair and a record player spinning softly, the crackle of a jazz record filling the space. Jungkook stepped inside, his breath catching as he noticed a framed photo on a side table. It showed a younger Taehyung, maybe late teens, smiling in a way Jungkook had never seen, warm and unguarded, standing beside an older woman with his sharp cheekbones and a man with a stern but kind face. His parents, maybe? The image was so at odds with the cold, commanding billionaire Jungkook knew that it felt like glimpsing a ghost. "You shouldn't be here," Taehyung's voice cut through the quiet, low and sharp. Jungkook spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. Taehyung stood in the doorway, his black sweater and slacks blending into the shadows, his expression unreadable but his eyes blazing with something raw, anger, maybe, or something deeper. Jungkook's mouth went dry, his hands raised instinctively. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it," Taehyung said, stepping into the room, his presence shrinking the space. He crossed to the record player and stopped it with a flick of his wrist, the silence heavier than the music. "This room is off limits." Jungkook's cheeks burned, guilt mixing with defiance. "I wasn't snooping," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I wanted to understand you. This place, it's also," he gestured vaguely, struggling for words. "It's like you're a stranger, even to the people who work for you." Taehyung's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking to the photo Jungkook had been studying. For a moment, he seemed to waver, a crack in his armor, before his expression hardened again. "You don't need to understand me," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "You're here to do a job, not play detective." The words stung, but Jungkook held his ground, his eyes locked on Taehyung's. "Maybe I wouldn't have to if you didn't keep me in the dark. You say I'm not just a contract, but then you shut me out. Which is it?" Taehyung, the air crackled with tension, Taehyung's eyes narrowing as he stepped closer, close enough that Jungkook could feel the heat radiating from him. "You want to know me?" Taehyung said, his voice dangerously soft. "Fine. That photo," he nodded toward the frame. "My parents. They built this empire, then tore it apart with their choices. Betrayal. Greed. I learned early that trust is a luxury I can't afford." Jungkook's breath hitched, the rawness in Taehyung's voice catching him off guard. "I'm not them," he said quietly, his heart pounding. I'm not here to betray you. I'm here because I have no choice. Taehyung's gaze softened, just a fraction, his eyes searching Jungkook's face. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. That's what makes you dangerous. Dangerous, Jungkook echoed, his voice trembling with a mix of confusion and something warmer, something that stirred in his chest at Taehyung's closeness. I'm just me. Taehyung's lips curved, not quite a smile but close, a flicker of something unguarded in his eyes. That's enough, he said, his voice low, almost tender. He reached out, his fingers brushing Jungkook's arm for a fleeting moment, the touch sending a jolt through him. You make me want to trust again. That's dangerous. Jungkook's heart raced, the air between them thick with unspoken possibility. He wanted to lean into that touch, to ask what Taehyung meant, but the billionaire pulled back, his expression closing off as quickly as it had opened. Don't come in here again, Taehyung said, his tone reverting to command. And don't push me, Jian. Not yet. As Taehyung turned to leave, Jungkook's eyes fell back to the photo, the young Taehyung's smile haunting him. He'd seen a glimpse of the man behind the billionaire, a man shaped by loss and betrayal, and it only made him want to know more. But as he left the room, the weight of Taehyung's words, "You make me want to trust again," settled over him, a promise and a warning all at once. He was in deeper than ever, and the storm of Taehyung's world was only growing stronger. The estate's kitchen was a hive of quiet efficiency, stainless steel counters gleaming under soft lighting as staff moved with practiced precision. Jungkook stood awkwardly near the island, a glass of water in his hand, feeling out of place among the flurry of activity. It was early evening, and he'd come down hoping to grab something to eat after skipping lunch, his appetite dulled by the weight of the day's events, especially the glimpse into Taehyung's past in that hidden room. But the kitchen, like everything in the estate, was a reminder of how far he was from home. A young man in a crisp white chef's uniform glanced up from chopping vegetables, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Jungkook. "You're the surrogate," he said, his tone clipped, not quite a question. "Didn't expect you to be wandering around." Jungkook's grip tightened on the glass, the bluntness catching him off guard. "I'm just getting some water," he said, his voice steady despite the unease curling in his chest. "Didn't mean to bother anyone." The chef, Namjoon, according to his name tag, set his knife down, wiping his hands on a towel as he studied Jungkook with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "No bother," he said, but his smile was tight. "Just surprised. Mr. Kim doesn't usually let guests roam free. Especially not with all the trouble you're causing." Jungkook's stomach twisted, the words hitting like a jab. "Trouble?" he echoed, his voice sharper now. "I'm not causing anything. I'm just doing what I signed up for." Namjoon raised an eyebrow, leaning against the counter. "Sure. But that leak? The security lockdown? It all started with you. Some of us are wondering why Mr. Kim's risking so much for someone like," he trailed off, gesturing vaguely at Jungkook's worn sweater and jeans, the implication clear. Jungkook's cheeks burned, anger flaring alongside the sting of being judged. "You don't know me," he said, his voice low but firm. "And you don't know what I'm doing for him. So maybe keep your opinions to yourself." The kitchen went quiet, the other staff pausing their tasks to glance over, the tension palpable. Namjoon's smile faded, his eyes hardening. "Watch your tone, kid. You're not the one calling the shots here." Before Jungkook could retort, a familiar voice cut through the room, sharp and commanding. Enough. Taehyung stood in the doorway, his presence like a sudden storm, his dark eyes locked on Namjoon. He wore a tailored grey shirt, sleeves rolled up, but the casualness did nothing to soften the authority radiating from him. The kitchen staff rose, their movements halting as Taehyung stepped forward, his gaze never wavering. "Mr. Kim," Namjoon said, straightening, his voice tinged with unease. I heard you," Taehyung interrupted, his tone icy. He stopped beside Jungkook, close enough that their shoulders nearly brushed, and the proximity sent a jolt through Jungkook's already frayed nerves. "You don't speak to him like that. Ever." Namjoon's face paled, his hands fidgeting with the towel. "I didn't mean any disrespect, sir. I was only out," Taehyung said, his voice low, final. "Now." Namjoon hesitated, then nodded curtly, grabbing his apron and leaving the kitchen without another word. The other staff resumed their tasks, avoiding eye contact, the air thick with unspoken tension. Jungkook stood rooted to the spot, his heart pounding, the glass of water still clutched in his hand. Taehyung turned to him, his expression softening but still guarded. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quieter now, meant for Jungkook alone. Jungkook nodded, though his throat was tight. "Yeah. I didn't expect that." He glanced down, his voice dropping. "He's not wrong, though. The leak, the trouble, it's because of me." Taehyung's jaw tightened, and he stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on Jungkook's shoulder, the touch firm but grounding. "He's wrong," he said, his voice low, intense. "The leak isn't your fault. You're not the problem, you're the solution." "My solution?" Jungkook's breath hitched, the weight of Taehyung's words sinking in. He looked up, meeting Taehyung's gaze, and found something raw there. Protectiveness, yes, but also a flicker of vulnerability that echoed the confession in the hidden room. "Why do you keep doing this?" Jungkook asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Protecting me. Standing up for me. Don't." Taehyung cut him off, his hand tightening briefly on Jungkook's shoulder before dropping away. "Don't say you're just anything. You're here because I chose you. Because you're stronger than anyone in this damn house gives you credit for." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Jungkook's heart raced, the kitchen fading around them as Taehyung's gaze held him captive. For a moment, he thought Taehyung might say more, might close the distance, but the billionaire stepped back, his expression closing off. "Eat something," Taehyung said, his tone reverting to command, though softer than usual. "And stay out of trouble. I have enough to deal with." He glanced at the remaining staff, his voice sharpening. "Anyone else has a problem, they answer to me." As Taehyung left, the kitchen resuming its rhythm, Jungkook sank onto a stool, his mind reeling. Taehyung's protectiveness, his fierce defense, felt like a shield and a chain all at once. He was no longer just a surrogate, no longer just a mistake. He was something more, something Taehyung valued enough to fight for. But as he sipped his water, the memory of Namjoon's words lingered, a reminder of the danger circling them. The leak, Yoongi's network, Taehyung's enemies, they were closing in, and Jungkook was caught in the crushes.